Greetings and salutations to all you folks out there, and welcome to the finals of the Legend of the Stars tournament. This is going to be between Whiteheart and Zoc, a best out of 5 matchup. On this particular map, which happens to be Twin Rivers, we have Petrick on the top right and Zoc on the bottom left, both in the UEF faction. Twin Rivers is a difficult map to play, at least for me. You've got to focus both on expanding as hard as possible and on being as aggressive as possible while also defending your expansioneers. It's a weird combination, and there's a lot of potential for run-bys. Even though there are 2 apparent choke points, the map is large enough that you need to field a vast horde of units to make things work. Whiteheart has gone first and second. Land looks like a cue for third air, so yep, there it is, postponing that air game at least for a little bit. Engineer moving to the rear after some manual reclaim on a 113 boulder and some rocks around the edge, and he will be getting all 4 mass extractors in the rear moving into the hydro. This engineer will be assisting, and then looks like we got land factory and radar to the rear with a tiny little bit of aggro, a mech marine on the front line. Zoc is also going for 2 land factories and an air, looks like third air, same, but we have slightly less power, so he will most likely be relying on a little bit more reclaim of the trees in order to make his build work. Going back over to observers, it looks like he does have manual reclaim, a couple of mechs as hydro, nothing looking like a factory in the rear, and he is a bit further delayed on his total build out of his entire expansion. Looks like we are going to get a snag, the Snoop coming into range. Mech Marine immediately knocking the Snoop out after taking a couple of little shots. Petrick microing like mad, avoiding the shells of that Tham nearly perfectly, has as of yet not taken a single shot. There's 2 in a row, but it looks like he's still got a chance, and the tank is down. Well killed by that Mech Marine. Petrick throwing out the smiley face there as he knows that he has triumphed in his micro war. That Mech Marine will be free to attempt to kill on another engineer. But there are a couple of tanks in the area. Look like he will thread the needle through the center and then pick up this engineer that has just been spotted. Engineer moving out to dodge, trying to get away from a couple of those bullets, and a single shell from Zoc's striker will take it down. So there is a little bit of an exciting early game. I love to watch these higher ranked players do this because I could not hope to have the APM to spend on doing something like that while also micromanaging my base. Engineer going to go down for Zoc. It was attempting to get to the middle. There are 2 T2 transports embedded in the cliffside along with a T2 wreck. That is going to give a total of 400 mass, or no, about 600 mass actually, right there. And then we've also got rocks around the edges and mech marines that can be reclaimed for 20 a pop. That means Petrick has reclaimed his edge, whereas Zoc hasn't, which will give him what? 773 to 1230, about 8 to 9 T1 tanks advantage in the early game, but of course Zoc can easily make up for that with a bit of reclaim himself. We've got 4 land factories down for Zoc with a fairly conservative power build, 240 in the bank, slightly positive on both of his eco. And I think, yeah, he will be able to build some stuff to balance that out. Excellently done there. Looks like Petrick is slightly more negative on mass, has also finished 4 land factories and is power building some more generators. That is looking like adjacency for either another land factory or possibly even an air factory. Looking back out at the wide world, we are going to see an engineer from Zoc moving over towards the left. That is going to edge build a factory on the expansion island. It'll give him an opportunity to claim 4 mass extractors on the outside edge, plus a couple of 113 mass boulders and a fair bit of reclaim. So kudos to him if he can get that under his spell. Zoc is going to move in and clear out an engineer. Petrick losing this expansion possibility, at least for the next couple of minutes. These tanks will die to the incoming units, but the damage has been done. A new expansioneer must be dispatched, or else the ACU will have to build it himself. On the south, Petrick trading blows has successfully killed off an engineer here. Will stop these mass extractors from being built, as well as deny that one at least temporarily. And Zoc is also moving his ACU into the outside expansion. This is an important move relatively early in the game because it will protect this core base from run-bys from units that you're not able to stop. This map, it's one of those ones where you think that you can get the choke point locked down. You really hope in your heart of hearts that you don't have to build as many units as you actually do, and then the other person just T1 spams you into oblivion and are able to poke and prod you to death all around the outside edges. It's kind of a similar story to Open Palms, where I also struggle a fair bit. Maybe it's just that I'm a bad ladder player. Who knew? We've got radar built on the front line. Petrick will know exactly what is coming and where it is coming from. We've got units all the way around that are all ticked off. So that is an excellently placed intel unit that is about to die to a couple of blows from a tank, but at least Petrick does know what is going on. Transport is out. That is going to pick up units and move to the south expansion. This tank was able to escape and move to the rear. It will be scouted by this T1 air scout and eliminated. The hope there, I am sure, was to pick up a hapless engineer moving out to claim the mass extractors once again. Looks like a little bit of an engagement on the left. Zoc is going to take the win with slightly superior unit count, and that will steamroll into a push that might be able to eliminate these mass extractors should he choose to move forward. Speaking of those mass extractors, Zoc is just now picking his up. Petrick has already claimed his two on the right, and might lose these at least temporarily, giving Zoc that little advantage that we're seeing right now. 49 mass to 43 mass per tick as I withdraw into my own Lysdexia temporarily and read those numbers backwards. Let's go take a bit of a gander at the reclaim. 3,000 for Petrick, almost exactly, and 2,100 for Zoc. So a bit of a disparity there, but not one that is insurmountable. We've got Mech Marines out on the island for Zoc. Excellent little early aggression unit that you might be able to pick up an engineer drop with. On the south side, 3 engineers were relocated to the island, and we have first Lobo just in case there's a factory on the south side. But of course, there is not. I see a drop order queued. Where is that? Transport over here. Zoc making a play for the island, but I don't think that that will be successful due to that artillery already being out. There's no way that you're going to get a factory built in time to deny that kind of push. Zoc wading into tanks on the right side of the map. Some of those will run by his commander and succeed in killing off a couple of mass extractors, but Zoc's tanks are going to push up from the back of his base and deal with the incursion. Might have a little bit of a run by here going on. We've got 2, 3 tanks in range and 3, 4 out to the front. It is going to be close. These two are able to snag the first of the tanks, but that one will be in range to eliminate, and then that is a complete and total shutdown of the run by. That was very, very close, but Zoc was able to prevent it. Speaking of preventing run-bys, one of the best things you can do to do that thing that I just said is build some wall sections in order to bungle up the pathfinding of the incoming units. Engineers have been dropped and immediately killed off. That is the end of that. Let's get an interceptor count, because I'm curious to see who is in control of the air. I see that brave little tank in the back there. We've got 5 interceptors versus 3, which does not make for much of an air fight, but what does make for a good fight are some T2 units. The pillar spam has begun with... Nope, hold on. Why are you building strikers? Hold up. Did you forget your Q? You probably forgot your Q. It is now converted over to pillars, and T2 units are moving out into the field, both flak and tanks. We've also got a T2 engineer out of the factory for Whiteheart. Looks like 2 engineers back to back. I would probably bet he's going to build some TMD and some power generators and move on into the later stages of the game. The T2 shift happened earlier for Zoc, though. He's already got 5 T2 tanks on the front line, which should be more than enough to squash the resistance on the left-hand side. I think, though, that the ACU placement will at least slow this down, because when you shift to T2 early in the game, those first few tanks are the most critical thing that you have at your disposal, and if you wander into the range of an ACU and get them overcharged, it means you've completely and totally wasted your mass advantage in the early portions of the game. Zoc is standing still with his commander next to a point defense as a group of tanks runs towards the rear of his base. A point defense in the core would be an excellent denial tool, but I don't think it's going to have time to respond. Pillars are an interesting T2 unit in that they are a main tank, but they are fast. They are able to outrun most T1 units and therefore make awesome responses and are able to probe into enemy territory very effectively. A horde of pillars is a terrifying thing indeed to deal with. Those 5 tanks ready to move out. Looks like they are going to move towards the rear of the base just as Petrick starts his gun upgrade. 12% so far on that. And in the south, we're going to have a successful run by that might succeed in killing 2 mass extractors. That might have been a repetitively redundant statement, but I hope that you can see what I mean. 6 engineers being picked up by a transport and then redropped on the north side. Not sure what that is all about. But these tanks will make it to the rear just in time to slip through the gap in the walls, even as these engineers are closing it off. It is going to be a close thing, but there's a dead engineer, and that'll halt the build on those walls. A little bit of a pathfinding boondoggle there as the other engineers are killed off. 63% on the range upgrade. So once that is done, this ACU will be able to effectively deny any units moving through this side. With that increased range, you can kind of stand your ACU in the middle and take a few steps either direction to overcharge passing units, but the damage has already been done. 5 tanks in the rear, definitely going to lose out on those mass extractors. Those may be able to move to the rear and kill as well, but no, there are 8 total pillars moving towards the north. 7, I miscounted. Those will be more than sufficient to deal with that, but still, a couple of mass extractors have gone down. On the south side, we've already got T2 power up, energy storage in place, so that Zoc can overcharge at will. We've got 2 tac defenses just in case a TML comes online, and it looks like Zoc is making a push for the home base. I think that's a bad decision though, because I don't think he has enough to break the front line. He is thinking twice and retreating just to get a little bit of a count on the tanks. We've got 15 pillars and a flak on the front line versus about 7 pillars, 12 tanks, 5 Lobos on the other side. I think that paired with the ACU, that definitely would have been a failing proposition. Not enough damage to be done on this side that would merit giving that much mass to his opponent. Got a single TMD over here as well with energy storage and the second T2 power generator going down. Petrick at the moment at 73 mass per tick with a total of 5 T2 mass extractors. Zoc slightly ahead at 77 with 5 T2s as well. That economic disparity is due to the raids in the rear. 5,000 for Zoc and 8,500 for Petrick in reclaim. Since their mass incomes are so tight together, that means that Petrick probably overall has the lead in income. Successful knockdown by Zoc, eliminating the left side main force of Petrick. Transport gonna get killed on the ground, may be able to get some engineers. Yes, those are coming up right now into this reclaim field, which will make a huge difference for Zoc. Reclaim is not as abundant on Petrick's side of the map, but he does have a relatively good control of that area. Zoc has nano regen, offering him a pretty hefty 50 regen per tick on his ACU, but he does not have the gun upgrade, which Whiteheart possesses. So Petrick will be able to reach out a little further with his overcharge and do a bit more base damage to this commander as he wails away on it. Wall has been completed over to the left. That leaves only one avenue of access for Zoc to take, more easily allowing Petrick to respond with his main forces and shut that son of a gun down. Anytime you can force your opponent to move in the direction that you want them to move, rather than letting them run by in any manner they please, it's a good decision to make because it lets you stay in control. Forces converging. Petrick going to eliminate Zock's main grouping, and that's going to put Zock at a pretty severe unit count disadvantage. This could potentially lead to a steamroll into the base, because right now most of the tanks are being diverted to the right hand side. Nano repair also going down on Whiteheart's commander, giving him a total advantage over Zock. That missing gun upgrade is a big deal. Hopefully he can get an engineer up to his ACU and get enough power. Yeah, he does have enough to slam that gun upgrade down in no time whatsoever, but we do have a pretty hefty mass stall going on. That is probably due to the heavy assistance on that T2 HQ. I was kind of hoping that it was going for a T3 shift based on the unit deficit that Zock has, but I don't think that's the case. Nano repair done. Zock getting a little brave with his ACU with far too few units at his disposal. Units attempting a run by on the top right, but it is just not going to be enough. Zock still slightly ahead on his mass income. I am not sure exactly why that is. He has finished a couple more T2 mass extractors in the back, but it looks like Petrick has finished just as many himself. Yes, that's what it is. These 4 mass extractors are claimed, these 4 are not. So because Zock is putting pressure on this edge of the map, he's denying that eco. Slam the units into a wall. That is exactly what you want to be doing. Yeah, sitting there taking T1 point defense fire. Those tanks are going to have to move to the side. They'll get picked up, streaming into this clump of pillars on the right. Whiteheart falling back slightly as he realizes that his unit numbers are dwindling. Zock pressing forward, hoping to push the advantage all the way into Petrick's core, or at least to claim this mass field for himself. But I don't think he's going to have enough units to pull it off. Petrick pulling in his reinforcements from the right side of the map that could have been preventing a run by. Now they're bearing down on Zock's commander. That 62 regen per tick is nothing in the face of the damage coming in from these T2 units. 7,000 HP on the commander as he is now virtually surrounded. He does have tanks moving up from the rear, may be able to pull this off if he can escape, but no, he takes Lobo fire. Janus fire, and that is all she wrote. The Janus were actually of his own build. They lost attack command and died in the base. Good game to both of these players. I do believe that the napalm from the Janus does friendly damage, but I'm not 100% sure on that. If that is the case, he definitely walked through his own napalm, and that could have contributed to his demise. That was very close though. Petrick was down to 6k HP, definitely not low enough to go for a bomber snipe on, but if those Janus had come in just a moment earlier and eliminated some of those T2 units, Zock would have survived that. So the first game win goes to Petrick. I believe that I am going to cast all of these games and put them into one video to kind of condense the viewing experience, so I will see you momentarily for the next game. Via 3 Protectorate is the next map. Zock is on the top right, Whiteheart is on the bottom left, and they are taking symmetrical Cybern once again. I am now completely convinced that these guys are choosing the same factions intentionally so that the only thing standing between them is the skill of the respective players. At 2100 to 2300 rank, these guys are both above anything that I could hope to achieve in FAF. Zock is going first and second land. We've got some very oddly spaced power generators, but now that I think about it, these are probably set up for a third air factory in the center. I don't know why you wouldn't go for a bit of a different build where you could get these power generators adjacent to the land factory, but like I just said, he is a higher rank than I, so I suppose we shall let him do what he pleases and trust that he knows what to do with his early build. 2 engineers out, manual reclaim to the left, land factory far to the right in order to get engineers out and reclaim all of these rocks. Speaking of rocks, look at the reclaim heat map on this son of a gun. There is a ton of mass to be had. You just gotta get out there and get it in hand. I was correct. Zock is building an air factory third right there in the crook of the power generators. Petrick, otherwise known as hentai.net for free kitten pics, which I highly recommend that you not take advantage of. He is going first and second land, third air as well, if I had to guess from his build. There 'tis. And he is going for a couple more power generators than his opponent. Also getting manual reclaim, leading into a factory on the left and right sides in order to get as much mass in his coffers as possible in the early portion of the game. Got an engineer over to the left that is reclaiming as we speak. That is what you use to float your eco, as you build way too much stuff at the beginning that you otherwise would not be able to support. This is the importance of reclaim in basically any game. If you're relying on mass extractors and your opponent has mass extractors plus 500 mass in income from reclaim, he is going to be quite a few tanks ahead of you, possibly an entire land factory in production ahead of you, and he will win the game strictly by sheer number of units. We'll have to see how these guys engage in the airplay at the earliest portion. I am struck by the fact that I've seen more third air factories this tournament than I think I have ever seen. So from that, we might deduce that the first bomber strategy is mostly dead, and that early air doesn't play as big a part in the game as it used to. We're seeing a greater priority placed on early aggression through land units, and also getting more engineers out into the map earlier. Mech Marine is, or not a Mech Marine, that is a UEF thing. Hunters, these Cyberns labs are moving to the south for Zoc. That is going to run face first into a Mantis, attempt a little bit of a dodge, but the relay, or the reflexes were a little too slow. The Mantis is going to pick up that Hunter with barely any damage done. Hunter moving into the south is now going to divert and try to kill off this mass extractor. Petrick may have that on radar. Yes, he does. So if he moves a Mantis over to this area to intercept, he might be able to save that engineer. Via 3 Protectorate doesn't have quite as much reclaim as Bermuda Locket, but it does have enough to merit an incredibly quick push to T3 or some of the most substantial T1 spam that you will ever see in your life. To that end, we've got 4 land factories placed on the outside edge from Petrick, and we probably have another group of land factories on the right once the ACU is in the area. Air Factory is up, going first Interceptor, and nope, there's already been an Air Scout out. I am just behind looking at it. Zoc is now preparing to engage on air as well, but he is pausing temporarily in order to rectify a power problem, going for 5 land factories in the base to get those up as quickly as he possibly can. 3 more over to the left once this engineer gets done building the mass extractors. And then I do believe the ACU is moving to the south. Yes, it is, where 4 more land factories are queued. So that's going to be a total, actually, I'm just going to count it up, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11 and 15 land factories versus 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, and whatever the ACU queues, 10, 11, 12. So there's probably going to be an early game unit advantage in Zoc's favor, since he is building land factories close to his own base, but he's now canceled that queue in order to get more power up before he goes for his next factory. That adjacency is going to help him out a little bit, because right now he's struggling to survive on 340 power income. That's going to give him some more tanks in the field, like I just said. He is going to have the early unit count advantage, but this is crippling his ability to use up the reclaim that he's gathering on the outside edges of the map. He is struggling to balance and doing a pretty fantastic job with what he's got. Yeah, that is quite impressive indeed, not to pull a power stall for that long, and maybe he'll be able to get some headway with these trees that he's reclaiming, but he does need to get power up ASAP to get some tech going. He's got his 3rd factory about to go down on the front. Of course, as we've discussed in the past, building a factory takes more power than running said factory. So if he can just get to the point where he's building units instead of factories, he might be just fine. Engineer sucking up rocks quite happily on the front. Those are the happiest engineers you'll ever see. The ones that are feeding mass instead of taking it. More land factories on the left. Zoc looking to go for full T1 land spam. Another 8 planned for the left. Looks like he's also added another land factory to the queue on the ACU, and he has finished building his core groupings. We've also got 2nd air factory going down. Unpause on this one because he has finally topped up to 700 power income, more than enough to float his bar in the center. and then more power generators being built as we speak. Possibly 4 air factories going down as we move forward in the game. Many engineers reclaiming to the rear of Petrik's base. I am sure that we will see an attack move order from something. No, those have been replaced. If he doesn't move that attack move order, I think it just poofed out of existence. You've got to move it before the engineers run out of things to reclaim. Otherwise, they will lose their order, and then you just have to patrol them in order to get all of that reclaim. Looks like we've got a little bit of a unit advantage on the left for Petrik, but it is not a great one. There are enough Mantis here to stop an incursion into the base, but these could go to the left and wipe out the expansion, which would help Whiteheart out in the long run as he denies this mass to his opponent and maybe even gets to build it for himself. On the south side expansion, the unit advantage definitely goes to Zoc. He's got quite a few more Mantis en route, both on the left side and already in the expansion. 4th factory going down. I'm going to click over and we'll check reclaim and factory count. Nearly 10,000 reclaim for Petrik, 18 land factories running. Zoc is on 19 land factories, so closer than I thought it would be, and 11,000 reclaim. So these guys are running neck and neck in income, reclaim, and land factory totals. Second air factory is complete. Do not see more queued, but I do see an assistance for another T2 mass extractor. That's going to be number 3 for Zoc, which is probably why he has a slight mass advantage. Only 1 T2 mass extractor apparent on the south side. T2 land factory has been built. Engineers coming out to build T2 power. That is something that you've got to move to relatively early in the game. T2 as well for Zoc. Once again, neck and neck in every aspect. This is one of the things that I struggle with, is where do I stop building T1 power and start building T2 power? Both of these players have topped 1k power income with T1 power generators, which is just absurd. It's a ludicrous amount of power until you realize that you actually get more power per mass from T1 power generators than T2, which is pretty much true of any of the economy buildings from T1 through T3. They're less efficient as they go up in tech. However, they're more efficient in build space. So to get 500 power from these generators, you're going to have to build, what, 40 power generators? Something like that? Yes? And that's going to take up way more space than the 6x6 grid under a T2 power generator, or a 3x3 if you're taking the smallest available buildings. So you're able to much more easily shield your income and build it more efficiently because it takes less time to build. It is something that you have to do. All right. Mantis struggling to stay ahead on the left. Zoc going to win out by 1 tank. Moving into the center, Petrik is going to be able to kill off some of these engineers, but he will not be able to make it all the way in due to the strategically placed T1 point defense directly in front of that mass extractor. Transport will get shot down by interceptors from Petrik, and that's going to leave the south side somewhat in a stalemate. Both players have units in that area, and there is only 1 engineer building a single solitary land factory. Looks like Petrik is going to maintain control of the top expansion, and Zoc, if he is lucky, will get the bottom. Petrik has also broken into the middle base, which gives him the reclaim from a T2 power generator. Quite a substantial boost at this point. We've got 25k in Petrik's bank account and 23, almost 24 in Zoc's. So not a substantial lead. Nothing at this point that I would say is game-changing, but he does have the advantage over his opponent. Zoc is building up air, as we can see, capping off his home mexes. We've got 15 interceptors, and we have moved to T2 air. A single Corsair is ready to raid. On the south side, let's take a look at Petrik's interceptor count, which is a much more measly 9 interceptors. That gives Zoc extremely hard air control, although he does seem to be faltering slightly in the land game on the left side. I would not be surprised, yep, there it is, if a T3 land jump is on the way. Zoc skipping T2 entirely. I don't think he built a single tank, and he's going to jump straight to Loyalist, which are very speedy, able to exert pressure on the entire map much more effectively than T2 units. Same jump on the way for Whiteheart, who is using that little bit of extra reclaim that he had to get 3 T2 power generators down and rush his T3 land factory. We've also got a T3 mass extractor in the base that is capped off. No caps on his other T2s, and T2s in all of his safe locations. Looks like a move into the center. I take it back. There has been a single T2 tank built. A Rhino is out there on the front line, but that may be the only one. Nope, there is one as well. So he was building from the support factory for just a moment as he waits for his T3 factory to finish. Had to go for more power. Zoc struggling once again with power income. I think that's a repeating theme this game, as he's had to halt his plans in one area or another in order to build more power generators. Plenty of Corsairs on the front line. That'll give him an opportunity to snipe a strategic asset or 3 once the flak hits the field, though. And I would not be surprised if after a couple of Loyalists we see some mobile flak. Nope, there it is. We've got support factories on the front line that are building Rhinos and flak as we speak. Once you get mobile flak out, it's much more difficult to exert air control over the other player, because once you start moving in on raids, flak comes into the area, and then all of your interceptors die in a couple of shots, leaving your enemy's inties available to kill the bombers, which may not die quite as quickly, but will die on the second or third pass over mobile flak. Zoc losing out on his land units right there. An attempt at a push in the middle will successfully kill off. No, the T2 finish just in time to get an HP bump that will save that mass extractor from certain doom. Petrick succeeding in maintaining his eco on the center. 120 mass per tick versus 87, as Zoc does not have a single T3 mass extractor and has also not upgraded his cores to T2. We've got 3 T2s on that side, none on this side, and we're starting to see T2 drops for Petrick in his outside bases. So the eco game is going to be a bit difficult for Zoc to come back with. 33,000 reclaim under Zoc's belt, 41 for Petrick. That is going to translate to quite a few extra T3 units for Petrick. We've got 5 Loyalists in the base. Not sure what those are doing all the way around in the rear, but Corsairs are coming in, not going for an ACU snipe, it would appear. They're going after the power. Excellent choice. Oh my goodness, 2 dead in a single pass. The third sure to die. Interceptors coming in over mobile flak, which is going to retarget now. Corsairs finishing off the last of the T2 power generators. Might be able to kill something else critical if they retarget quickly enough. I would highly recommend either the T1 power or going after that T3 mass extractor, trying to rebuild T2 power as quickly as possible over the wreckage's 1,000 power stall, crippling Petrick's economy. The interceptors were able to claim an air win, as Petrick's had to shut down his entire air production due to power needs. More T1 power going down as Corsairs continue to harass the base. T2 shield going up, thankfully able to be maintained by that T2 power generator that has just been finished, as mobile flak continues to pour out of the factories, trying to knock those bombers out of the air. Zoc pulling over the 100 eco mark, now double and then some the power income of his opponent. That's going to give him some breathing room to get some units in hand to try and cripple his opponent yet further. 104 to 97 mass income thanks to another 500 deep power stall. T2 power generator coming back online, and I know the next one is going to be planned shortly, probably inside of the shield. Loyalists are now ready to move out on the map, but another wave of bombers comes in again. The power goes down again. 1.8k down to 680 power for Petrick. That is brutal, crippling him over and over again. Another good target would be the T2 engineers, because if you don't have T2 NGs, you're not able to rebuild the power as quickly. Damage going down once again on the P-Gen that is rebuilding. Corsair flying over and dying to the mobile flak. Of course, the sacrifice of those units is a good one if they're able to keep the opponent suppressed like is happening here. Loyalist moving into the center of the map. Zoc is going to lose one of his expansions, I do believe. 2 Loyalists. Nope, he is not. It was 2 Loyalists plus Mantis versus a couple of Loyalists. Probably going to lose out on this one. Then the Loyalists will be able to kite out and kill off all of the Mantis that are coming towards the base. Petric's in firm control of the north side expansion. The south side expansion has been denied. Zoc is within 30 income of his opponent now with 106 income. I would hope that he drops a T3 mass extractor at some point, but right now his entire strategy seems to revolve around massing Corsairs in his base. Petric is going to lace more and more mobile flak into his build as his opponent expends his mass on air, and after that reaches critical numbers, the air won't be any good. Unfortunately, Corsairs not that great at air domination. Their anti-air weapons are quite weak, but as long as they can keep poking and prodding at the outside edges of the map, they will be useful. Only 2 flak in the area will take a bit more to drop those in one pass. Corsairs, of course, do about 1,000 damage to stationary large footprint targets. Since their rockets do have quite a bit of firing variance, they'll now be harassing the outside edge, where Petric has taken the excellent move of building more T1 power generators in diverse locations so that he can't be shut down all at once. Loyalists attempting to move in on the right, but T1 point defense going down all over the place for Zoc as he strives to contain his opponent inside a smaller slice of the map than he possesses. Look at the reclaim field down here from the fights that have taken place. That is all going to go into Zoc's hands. Then on the north side, we've got a bit more reclaim that is also in Orange's control, but not all of it, and not as strongly as it was just a moment ago. Petric is back up to 3.1k power, which is opening up his opportunity for T3 production once again. We've also got T2 air factories online, though they are still paused due to his struggle with power up until a couple moments ago. Assistance looks like it's going back to the T3 factory. 3 T2 power generators back in place, and more T1 power built in a couple of different places on the map. So hopefully the power is diversified enough that Zoc will not be able to take it all out in one go again. That was one of the most brilliant raiding moves that I've seen in this entire tournament. Zoc brought it back from certain defeat to contestable. 123 mass to 123 mass tied up as a couple of these raids go down and a little bit of eco dies, and then 3.3 to 3.6k on the power dial. Well done indeed to Zoc. Looks like he's got all of his mass extractors to T2 in the core groupings except for this one, which he is upgrading now. He's got engineers on the build queue. Loyalists raiding on the north side to eliminate the mass extractors that he can. Decrease those mass numbers as much as possible, down to 116, 127 for Zoc. Looks like T3 units clumping to the left for Petric, and he does still have enough to maintain control on the right. So the numbers continue to grow. Corsairs moving in on these units. There is mobile flak in the area, though. If I were Zoc, I would pull those units back ASAP and save those Corsairs for another day. We've got even more T2 power up on the front side of the right expansion. That would be probably the easiest thing to snipe with the Corsairs, but it is going to take, what, 4 Corsairs to break the shield plus 2 more to kill the power generator underneath. 1 Corsair short of a single pass kill on the power generators. Corsairs are not what you want to be fighting air with. Please, Zoc, notice the horrible mistake that you have made. Corsairs falling to the Enties as more and more of the Air Force engages. That is going to be yet another air win for Zoc. Let's get a count on the eco and reclaim and whatnot. Zoc is rocking 46,000 reclaim, 60,000 for Petric. Holy hell, that's quite a lead. And then if we go and take a look at our loyalist count, we've got 33 loyalists, 67 mantis versus, hold on, 38 loyalists and 7 mantis. So a few more loyalists on Zock's part, but not anywhere near the T1 land unit count. We do have a T3 Air Factory shift though. T3 power is down. Air Factory is building whalers as quickly as he can afford. The T3 gunships do not take as much power to produce as ASF do, but they are beefy sons of guns, almost 6,000 HP per gunship. It takes a lot of anti-air to shoot that down, and while your gunships are soaking damage from the enemy entities that are trying in vain to kill them, you're able to just swoop in and eliminate the air forces of the other player. It is the ultimate air-based meat shield, well, maybe other than a Soul Ripper. We've got Loyalist clumping on the left, taking a defensive posture, just trying to prevent anything from a running by. And then on the right-hand side, it looks like Petrick has reclaimed part of his territory that he lost. He's able to front up right to the edge of Whiteheart's base. Whaler moving in, sensing that there are many flak in the area, and circling around the outside edge before finally retreating. About 300 DPS on each of those gunships totals up to a pile of hurt once you get several of them in one place. Flak being sniped off by the gunships as that massive HP pool simply shrugs off the damage rolling in. One gunship is down as the flak is targeted. Looks like one flak surviving. The second gunship goes down. That was a foolish decision on Zock's part, wasting two of those gunships and most of the HP on the third to do basically no damage to that force. But now that I'm looking at it, he was able to push away things that would have otherwise swept the base and killed off the build power here. So I guess he thought he needed to make that sacrifice in order to maintain his build power. So maybe not as bad as I initially thought it was. Two Loyalists versus two and a whole bunch of flak. Since the Loyalists are not focus firing each other, the two are going to win. A little bit of a push by Zock on the left, not going to be very successful. And we now have interceptors moving in on a couple of Whalers. ASF in the mix now for Zock. He does have enough power to build at least a couple. Interceptor pummeling the ASF pummeling the interceptors as it passes through, but unfortunately there are bouncers in range now that are going to start auto KOing those air units as they come in. Looks like there's one Whaler still alive, two Whalers still alive. Air win does go to Zock, but it is not as good as it might have been. Now that we're seeing more anti-air in the mix for Whiteheart, and he's back up to 171 mass per tick, I think that the number of units is going to get to be too damn high for Zock to deal with. We've got T3 support factory on the right, no T3 on the, well, nope, there is one right there without that much assistance. And then most of the assistance is in the base. Oh my, it is on a Monkey Lord. We're gonna see a T4 this game. First T3 power generator going down in the back. T3 HQ has been built, but no T3 air as of yet due to the limitations of his power supply. Looks like Petrick might be in for a bit of a fit. His ACU is in range of quite a few Loyalists as he struggles to pull in units from the back of his base. He's got to land some good overcharges, but the misplace on that ACU might be his demise. Below half HP, 2,000, 1,900, and boom! Stalled by the EMP blast of those Loyalists moving into range. Zock able to take the win on this game, even though he was at a pretty heavy eco disadvantage. 61k in reclaim versus 75k in reclaim, with a substantial lead in mass for Whiteheart through the majority of that game. Well freaking done to Zock, coming back at multiple instances. The power kill was glorious, the ACU kill was glorious, the T3 gunship move was perfectly timed, not necessarily for aggression, but to defend his base just barely well enough to get those units in there and kill that commander. Well done to both of these excellent players. Let me queue up the next game and we'll see what waits for us over there. Zock and Whiteheart each have one win under their belts moving into the third round of the best out of 5. The map is Arctic Refuge, and Petrick is taking the top right. Zoc, the bottom left. Symmetrical Cybran, once again, is the faction of choice. Arctic Refuge is a map that I have not played very much, but it is relatively typical of a 5x5 land game. You've got a few mass extractors in cores, then you've got many expansions with single mass extractors. Therefore, you need tons of land in order to maintain control of as much of the map as possible to gain this income. Around the backs, we've got plenty of rocks and trees. These are going to be worth quite a bit of power and mass, so you want to get engineers out early to reclaim. However, since this map is so small, it merits care in your expansion, because if you build too many engineers early, your enemy will sweep you without a shadow of a doubt. However, that one extra engineer getting a little bit of reclaim could make the difference between life and death as this game moves forward. Are those 10 mass? That would be tree clumps. So the tree clumps are triggering my overlay. There may not even be, well, there are rocks, but they're all worth less than 5. Coolio, so the tree clumps do actually show up as full reclaim. We've got early aggression out for Petrick, a hunter headed towards the south, and then on Zoc's side, we've got 3 land factories queued after, what? First air factory going for Jester. What on earth? This is either going to be one of the oddest successes I've ever seen, or this is going to fall flat on its face and Zoc will go out in a blaze of glory. We got 100 power because 4 adjacent power generators built extremely early in the game. He is stalling, but he will get the air unit built. And there, my friends, comes a Jester from the factory exactly at the power stall point. Holy cow, the balance on this son of a gun, Zoc. Thank you for that amazing early build order. So the Jester is going to move directly into the enemy base to kill off as much build power as possible in the early portion, I would assume. We've got a 3 land factory open for Petrick. That's going to give him so many land units to pour out into the map and claim all of these expansions, putting Zoc in a bit of a difficult position if his first Jester is not completely successful. No idea if this works, he says, as he is building his 3rd land factory. Jester immediately goes for engineers and power as they come out of the factories. If he's able to kill off these P-gens and completely throw the early build, this might make the difference for Zoc, but no, he is going to retreat and look for more engineers. I probably would have stayed in there and tried to kill off some of those power generators, but it looks like we've got 2 mobile anti-airs now out now, and that should put a damper on that Jester's ability to move in on the base. So he's going to move around the outskirts of the map, killing engineers as he goes, and just trying to make up for the early game disadvantage by killing all of these expansioneers and forcing Petrick to build more and take the time to expand. I can't decide if this is brilliant or incredibly stupid, but we will find out a little bit later. 5 kills, 6 kills coming in on the Jester as an interceptor finally moves in to take the kill. Jester moving back into the home base directly over the 2 mobile anti-airs. It's going to do a little bit of a hover, laying a little damage on the ACU and not get much else done. 6 engineer kills to its credit and a total shutdown of the early expansion. Zoc now at 11 mass per tick, 100 power, slightly behind his opponent's power income, but ahead in mass, and he does have far more engineers out and is claiming more reclaim than Petrick possibly could with the units at his disposal. I'm actually going to pause the game. This is something that I haven't done before, and we're going to take a look at the immediate after effects of the Jester. So if we click over to White Heart, can I not until I pause? There we go. We've got a total of 12 Mantis in the field and 2 engineers on the entire map. 2 engineers, 12 Mantis. Zoc, on the other hand, if we play a second and pause again, has got 13 Mantis, 1 more, and a total of 8 engineers out, plus a matching interceptor for his opponent. 3 land factories, 1 air, 3 land factories, 1 air, slight power disadvantage. I think we can conclusively say that Zoc is ahead due to that Jester. We'll have to see how the rest of the map plays out, but that is a very interesting opening from a masterful player. Mantis moving out on the left. No way that Petric can get enough Mantis in the area to deny that. It is going to move directly through the outside expansion. It looks like Petric does see it coming, whether that was through an air unit that got through the back or what, I know not. But he has repositioned slightly, though not enough. On the south side, we do have a land factory plan that has apparently been abandoned due to mass stall, and that engineer is now moving into reclaim position. Mantis engaging. We've got 7 versus 5, but that was very bad positioning on Zoc's part. Just a couple of units in range of approximately all of Petric's unit. Single Mantis moving through the back end, hoping to score a kill on an engineer, and then these are repositioning to hopefully group up with more of their comrades in the rear and deny this push later on. Petric is now working on his 4th land factory, and we've got units moving both through the center and to the right, as well as now having enough to clump on the left. Zoc is going to miss that Mantis, but I don't think it will do too terribly much damage as the engineer has already moved out of the area. However, it is going to cross paths with a mole, which should lend itself to an engineer kill slightly later on. We've got more power being built by Zoc, who is still quite a bit behind in the power game. There's a 4th land factory and a 5th. So Zoc is on 5 for his factory count. Still on 4 over here. Zoc is rocking 19 mass per tick versus 17. And as far as reclaim goes, we got 2,300 and borderline overflow for Zoc versus 1,400, and desperately trying to balance his eco on Petric's part. So Petric is doing a good job of coming back and defending himself after that early game, but with the amount of mass that Zoc has in storage, it makes me slightly worried that he could have taken an advantage earlier if all of this mass in storage were now converted into tanks. Here comes the power stall as he attempts to catch up. More land factories being built. I hope that there's more power planned somewhere, but it looks like only the 2 engineers building power for now. ACU has moved into the center. Yet another land factory going down. Petric moving in as well, claiming the T1 point defense on this side, although he is not doing a very good job of mitigating damage on his commander. Come on, man! You're shredding so much HP for no reason whatsoever, and you've also walked your ACU into range of the other T1 point defense. What are you doing, son? More Mantis moving in to reinforce that commander, as Zoc diverts his forces to the left to deal with the mass extractor that is dying over there. I knew that that engineer passing past that mole, that was another repetitively redundant statement. That engineer passing the mole drew those Mantis in to kill the mass extractor and the engineer itself. Zoc losing out on the right, an engagement that is not favorable in numbers. That's going to be a shutdown with Petric able to take the reclaim from that little spat. T1 point defense putting further damage down on Petric's ACU, which is now approaching half health. Zoc still at about 3/4 plus, so he's got a pretty hefty advantage in HP, plus the unit advantage in the center of the map. Zoc now at 21 mass per tick versus Petric's 9, due to raiding in multiple places on the map and total denial of the south side and north side expansions to his opponent. This is just an absolutely brilliantly played game for Zoc as he slowly grinds his opponent into oblivion due to that early game advantage. A gunship is now in place for Whiteheart, but there is no way that that's going to be enough damage to prevent what is about to happen from taking place. Zoc moving his ACU in on Petric, 4,500 HP. Mantis being pulled in from the rear in a desperate effort to deny the push, and it looks like Zoc is going to take the safer option and retreat, at least temporarily. He's not going to risk losing his entire air force and Petric barely surviving and then getting the unit advantage from that point forward. Looks like we've got only 1 interceptor in place for Petric versus, only 1 for Zoc as well. The air count is decidedly low. No, 2 over here. He should be moving in to kill that Jester ASAP in order to preserve his land units which are now dying to this Jester. 7 kills, so the Jester from Petrick is technically more successful, but the kills were lower impact because it is much later in the game. Looks like a clump of 5 Mantis sent to the south by Petrick will be relatively successful in possibly killing one or more Mass Extractors. And then we've got another group moving in on the expansion. So Zoc is about to lose a couple of Mass Extractors himself, but he is still substantially ahead, nearly double the income of his opponent. Let's go ahead and check the unit count numbers and reclaim. We've got 44 Mantis, Power Stall, and 4,445 in the reclaim counter. Nearly identical 4,900 for Zoc, just a couple hundred mass ahead, although he is floating quite a bit. And then we've got a total of 49 Mantis. So pretty dang close between these people. Slight unit and eco advantage towards Zoc, but Petrick is definitely coming back. Looks like these Mantis are going to be successful in denying the run by, and they will now clump up into a greater number that will be able to kill off the entire group. Zoc still ahead in air count, but that is not going to make much of a difference unless he starts deciding to build combat units. 2 Mantis over here going to go down. Not going to succeed in taking out the Mass Extractor. I think you need to kill that mole at some point because that's giving a whole lot of free intel to Petrick. 3 more Mantis to kill, and then Petrick will control the entire north side of the map. Zoc now streaming his units through the middle. He's got 4 Mass Extractors in hand on the center of the map, plus several around the outside edge. Even though he's not able to control all of the outside expansions, he is close to the income of Petrick, actually virtually identical once he's killed off a couple of Mass Extractors. More Mantis moving in on the right, another Jester out for Zoc, so we are seeing 3 this game. Coolio, yo. And then 2 Mantis going down, not succeeding in killing that Mass Extractor. These guys now running neck and neck, although the power situation is definitely favoring Zoc, as is apparent from his superior air build. Whiteheart now engaging on the front line, trying to kill as many Mantis as possible by kiting his ACU out before they come in to do the damage. All those Mantis focus firing the ACU and then retreating as soon as the units come forward. Of course, the ACU is valuable as a meat shield in certain situations, and that was one of them. 4 Mantis versus 2. This expansion is a lost cause. Those Mass Extractors will go down, once again giving the mass advantage to Zoc as he tips back up to 31 on the eco scale. Jester eliminating Petrick's Mass Extractors in the south as well. This just keeps flip-flopping back and forth as these players struggle to maintain control of a map that is as spread out as this one. There are mild choke points in a few areas, but generally this map is open enough that the terrain doesn't make much of a difference in stopping the flow of units. An attempted run-by to the right will get utterly and completely shut down by a vastly superior number of Mantis. That is pretty much a waste of tanks is what I'm saying there. But now the ploy is revealed as Zoc moves slightly. He will not take up an aggressive stance. I don't think he is going to try to push his luck that far. I thought for a second he was going to move to surround the ACU, but with the response from Petrick moving those units back to the north to protect his commander, they slowed to a standstill. That Jester now moving up to the front, a valuable ship that is. It's not made a single kill, but it has dealt quite a bit of damage. There's the first kill in its name, but it is racking up some veterancy, so we know that it does have more damage in other areas. No! That was another Jester that killed those because it did decidedly kill several Mass Extractors. So that's Jester number 4, and Jester number 5 is out for Petrick, moving into the center to try and lay in some damage on these Mantis, but immediately getting shot down by enemy Inties. Zoc moving once again with a clump of Mantis on the right, harassing this outside edge. 3 radars built in one spot. That was a hastily placed build order indeed. All 3 getting killed, and now the Mantis are free to claim one of those Mass Extractors. Symmetrical move from Petrick to the south as he pushes with his own clump and takes out a couple of Mass Extractors himself. The map control is definitely favoring Zoc at this point. 29 mass per tick, as well as a 150-ish power advantage. Another Jester still over on the left with 3 kills. as it moves back towards the center to deal with some of these units. Massive air control from Zoc. Whiteheart threatened now. 2 Jesters moving in to deal damage as the Mantis are beat back. Petrick will be able to save himself from the land assault. The question is, can he deal with the air units? And I think the answer is yes, due to these mobile anti-air moving in from the rear. But his tenuous grasp on the map is failing as this game goes on, down to the quarter HP mark with 2,800 remaining on the bar. He does have a land factory down on the bottom left that is proving to be a thorn in the side of Zoc as it continually puts units in play on the bottom left quadrant. Another land factory on the, or bottom right I should say, top left also has a land factory that is now building units. So Petrick is diversifying his build power locations, but he's now getting a bit more adventurous with his ACU, trying to push into those tanks and kill some while they are retreating. Of course, there's not enough tanks here quite yet to kill that ACU with the backup from those units, especially since he now has a whopping 27 regen thanks to a veterancy. But that is still a bit further ahead than I would push my ACU if I were in his position. Oh, who am I kidding? I'm too brave with my ACU as well. With Jesters on the field, though, I would be a bit fearful of a snipe. Mantis moving in once again, lowering the HP on that ACU as it picks up its second veterancy. Actually, it had it just a minute ago because it's still 27 HP. Good Lord, Brink, get your tongue untied from the roof of your mouth. He's bringing his Mantis in to body block, and the ACU still consistently dealing that 100 DPS to the tanks, reducing their numbers as Petrick keeps virtually the same number at his disposal. We've now got 5 Jesters out on the map, which is definitely enough. 6, 7 to threaten that commander, especially since he is below 6,000 HP. Let's check out the DPS numbers on those Jesters. Looks like we've got a total of 48 DPS. So 6 does nearly 300 DPS to that ACU, a matter of seconds to kill the commander. Not much time at all to react. Interceptors moving in on the enemy Jester, knocking it out of commission. We're not going to see any kind of T2 shift, I do believe. T1 is the only thing exerting control on the map, and if you stop building T1 long enough to go for a T2 factory upgrade, you risk losing your unit advantage. Jester on the south side threatened by a couple of interceptors, but Inti's moving in to secure air control once again for Zoc, but that Jester is threatened with death. 1 veterancy on it, 1 HP per second regen is not going to be enough to outrun a mobile anti-air chasing you down. That one will go away, as well as the north side's Jester, due to an interceptor, leaving 2 Mantis alone to tackle those T1 mass extractors. Zoc still at 33 mass per tick, 720 power, 12,800 reclaim versus 12,600 for Petrick. So neck and neck on the reclaim front, but now probably an accumulated 1,000-ish mass advantage for Zoc due to being ahead in eco for virtually the entire game. Here comes the Jester snipe, now confident enough in his numbers to come and kill that ACU as the Mantis pour over this firebase. 2 T1 anti-airs ready to knock down those Jesters, but it will not be quick enough as Petrick drops below the 2k HP, 1k HP, and boom goes the dynamite. Petrick is down. Zoc saying, well, that worked better than expected. I would definitely agree. So another win marked up to Petrick, putting him 1 ahead, but he's still got to win another if he is going to take home the trophy. That is probably one of the most interesting 1 versus 1 matches I have watched in a very, very long time. I would welcome evaluation from some higher rated players in the comments if you've got anything to say about that adventurous first Jester build. The next location will be Canis River. Zoc is on the south side, Whiteheart is on the north, and they are both taking Aeon as their faction of choice, which does make sense since Canis River is a bit of a turtley map when you've got land-based factions, but with that hover, the entire map will be open to aggression and should make for a much more interesting game. Zoc opening first land, 2 power generators and 3 mass extractors. On the north side, we've got first and second land, third air, and a variety of P-gens for Whiteheart. So 6 mass extractors in the base does tend to lend itself towards a turtly experience when you're able to constrict choke points and then tech up behind them. But since Auroras are going to be able to raid around the entire outside edge, we will probably see a bit more dynamic of a game. 2 mass extractor pairs are on the left and then again on the right on this map, and then we've got 6 more mass extractors threaded through the center that are a bit more difficult to maintain control of. Zoc is going to be moving his ACU to the left to assist this Hydro. Odd that he would go 2 power generators and then walk that far to get his Hydro built, but I suppose that if he is doing so, he knows that he can make it. We're 27 mass positive, 2010 now that we've got several things building, so it does look like he is balanced relatively well. He's not spending a whole lot of his excessive mass income though, and we now have a flare from Petrick moving into the right side and hoping to pick up an engineer that is reclaiming all of these rocks, and he just missed it. If he would have just gone a little bit further, he would have been able to make it. Looks like the Spirit is going to deal a little damage to the engineer, but it will take way too long for that thing to kill it. It'll probably get its entire reclaim order done before that happens. Whiteheart is going for the Hydro on the outside, but much slower than his opponent is, and that is what's going to balance his air build, because his Hydro is going to come online slightly before the air factory finishes and starts production. Over here, we have an equivalent flare from Zoc that was also going to try to pick up the Expansioneer, but Aurora is going to swiftly deal with that and then move back to try and kill the Air Scout. Or not Air Scout, Land Scout. Land Scout is retreating though, so it might just stay alive to provide intel for another day. Flare moving in, trying to kill off these engineers. I am sure, yep, there it is. The tank got him despite the micro. If that would have been a kill, it probably wouldn't have made any difference because the Hydro was already built. But of course, if the Hydro was gone for later, then those engineers could have been extremely valuable to kill. We've got a total of 4 land factories already being completed with a 5th. Nope, just the, yes, 5th, 6th. I'm going to revise my number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 land factories queued for Zoc, and then we've got a 3rd coming online for Petrick as we speak. So that's going to give Zoc a little bit of an early advantage in land production, but we do see more factories being queued by Petrick around his well-planned adjacency, so that will not be an advantage for very long, I believe. Maybe an extra tank or 2 out of the factories before Petrick matches. We do have quite a few Auroras on the front line though, mainly due to that earlier T1 land factory completion, the 2nd one on this side, and that could sweep into the base and cause some serious issues for Zoc. He is going to have to move his ACU over to compete. Bit of dodge micro going down for both players. This Aurora trying valiantly to stay alive, claiming a couple of enemy tanks before it is defeated, but in the end, it will go down. 3 engineers building the land factory there. Zoc at 21 mass per tick and perfectly balanced as a bomber is now sighted coming across the map. So he is now going to realize, oh boy, I've either got to build mobile anti-air or I've got to get into the air game with a factory. Petrick also has these in the base. That's going to give him the ability to kill off a mass extractor, possibly. No more tanks pouring out that will take care of the unit. Bomber coming in. That will deal a devastating blow to the build power if it's allowed to land. There it is. 2 tanks and 2 engineers killed in a single pass. That bomber definitely paid for itself. In addition, it killed off the Expansioneer to the left. Well done with that bomber, Petrick. Whiteheart moving out into the center now, trying to get some more manual reclaims, zapping those large rocks to get that mass into his bank account. Total of 5 land factories completed with a 6th on the way and the air factory. We've got 5 completed with number 6 and number 7 for Zoc. It looks like no air factory planned as of yet, which seems like a dangerous decision to make as an Aeon player since all of your T1 land units die to single bombs, and that could wreak havoc on your unit count later on in the game. Another bomb coming in. That is going to prove my point, killing both of the land scouts and the tank in one hit. We do have a radar in the back, so that is not going to cripple the intel from Zoc, but it is going to make things more difficult moving forward. Yet another bomber moving in. Mobile anti-air is now out harassing, trying to drop those things from the sky before they cause any more damage. Another pass with the bomber, killing off one tank thanks to a little bit of a late dodge there. And then another bomber is looping over the north. If you're able to move your tanks appropriately, you can mitigate some of the damage, but all in all, you do not want bombers over your units as Aeon. 2 more tanks bite the dust as that bomber finally falls. We do have a T1 air factory in the works. 260 power does not seem like enough to run an air factory, but it does look like Zoc is going to manage it. Maybe I am overestimating the amount of power that it takes, and this is why I always end up overflowing hundreds of power in the games that I play. Zoc moving to the right with his commander to pick up a little bit of reclaim over there, and another bomber is now headed in to destroy as many tanks as possible, which would be 1 on the first pass. Mobile anti-air was nearly able to drop the bomber on that long overhead run, and now it kills it as 2 more tanks fall. So a successful hold on the left, but that does give Petrick a pretty good handle on map control, allowing him to take several more mass extractors than his opponent can. 27 mass versus 17 mass shows that to be the case. We've got a T1 points events going online, which is an excellent choice when you're versus Aeon, because the Auroras fall like flies before the might of the walled T1 PD, even in great quantities. Zoc trading blows with Whiteheart momentarily. I think that a range upgrade would be probably the best thing you can do for your ACU at this point in the game. Petrick building that T1 mass fabricator or mass extractor, possibly just to irk his opponent and provoke that move to the front. Zoc is now out of place with a huge quantity of Auroras closing in on his commander. This game might be over early, but no, Whiteheart's gonna see those units moving in and retract once again to keep his unit numbers high. We've got a radar and a T1 point events complete on the left side expansion, effectively locking down both avenues of access in this choke point. Now he's just got 1 to deal with as he threads his units through coming south. T1 artillery and mobile anti-air, of course, rounding that direction, with Auroras taking the direct path. Aurora's having to move to the right side once again as Whiteheart pokes at Zoc's base. Zoc did lose a couple of mass extractors down here from an earlier incursion, but he has rebuilt those and is now 19 to 31 in income. 260 power is not much though, and he is stalling to the tune of 73 as he's trying to build another T1 land factory, so I would hope that he is going to build some power soon. All in all, I think that Zoc has been outpaced here. His early build was shut down by that air factory move, and now he is paying the price as more Auroras come in range of his commander. That is doom for the ACU. 5,000 health, 4,000 health, and going lower, lower still. Not even any hope of a mutual. Nope, there it goes. Whiteheart is going to survive on 5,300 health. Excuse me. Well, that was, yeah, quality. A quality match. I think that was, yes, quality build. That was all down to the early instance of the game. Same as it was last time, but in the opposite direction. Whiteheart went for multiple factories in his core base immediately, and a 3rd air factory to have a bomber to throw at his opponent. Zoc, on the other side, went for the most minimalistic early build I've seen in a long time, then took a 20-second walk to build a hydro, and then go for another land factory. I know he was going for minimalistic power to try and get the land build up, but I honestly think 3 land factories might have worked if he just built them in his base with a more concise build order and sent 2 engineers for the hydro, same as Petrick did. I know that I'm overanalyzing a build as an 1100 player that a 2200 rated player did, but even I can look at this and know I think walking your ACU that far to fast build a hydro is a terrible idea. Well played, Petrick. Nice attempt, Zoc. And that leaves these guys at 2-2 wins. That means that the next game is going to decide the victor. It just had to be. It just had to be Badlands. Zoc is on the north, Whiteheart on the side, and this is to decide the winner of the trophy and the $500 prize. For first place, Zoc going first and second land, this time sticking to his base, so he's not going to doom himself with the equivalent build order from last game. 2 power generators for each side. First land factory is on the side towards the hydro, and then he'll be rushing engineers over here to build the 2 hydros, air factories, yada yada yada. And he's moving his ACU over to claim the mass extractors on the right hand side. Memeheart, otherwise known as Whiteheart, otherwise known as Petrick, is going to be building a single land factory, queuing over with the engineer to grab the hydro, and then we've got second air factory, second land factory, third air factory adjacent to the hydro, moving over to the hydro next door and building another land factory with a whole bunch of power generators. This ACU will be moving over to assist the engineer. I think that this hydro is significantly closer than the hydro in the last game was, but I might be wrong about that. I don't know. Maybe walking is not as bad as I thought it was. Snoop traveling to the middle. We've got 0 early aggression from either player as they strictly get more engineers out, and as soon as I say that, I am proven wrong by 2 hunters coming out of Zoc's factory, so maybe we will see something running by. Of course, as we know, on Badlands it does take quite a bit of time to expand, so it might leave an opportunity for these hunters to slip around the back edge and kill off the engineers in the rear, even if that is later on in the game. More scouts coming out. Those will go into pairs as the hunters move into the base. Zoc getting a second land factory online, queuing a third air over this away. So on the south side, we can see that Petrick is he's about 60% on his land factory, while Zoc has finished his land factory. Do we have a power stall? Yes, we do. We are going to make it just barely. That was a beautiful build, the eco balance that only comes from extremely experienced players. 57 in the hole on power, but that is with a build of an air factory, so 52 up now that that is complete, and then we're building an air unit and doing perfectly fine. The hunter has been scouted. There is a tank out with the expansioneer to save it from certain doom, and I just realized that this is our first non-symmetrical matchup. Whiteheart has taken UEF and Zoc has taken Cybran, so we will get to see some different units clashing this time around. We've got Mantis moving to the left. Of course, you got to be a little more careful about that because you got to assume that the enemy ACU is in the area. Whiteheart being a little bit more effective in his early expansion, claiming 19 mass per tick versus 13 for Zoc, but in return he has far fewer early units, and he's now having to deal with the raids from Zoc without being able to push any units to the other side himself in the early game. We do have a T1 tank moving around the wrong side of the central passage in order to get to the choke over here. And then the ACU is assisting on some more aggressive power being built. 300 power per tick to Whiteheart versus 200 for Zoc. So Petrick is apparently fond of building a bit more power early on, whereas Zoc is content to heavily micromanage his own bases in order to prevent the power stall that he gets from using an absolutely minimalistic build in the early game. It's kind of an interesting thing to see go by. I think it might be due to the fact that Petrick typically prefers to ramp up his mass income and therefore needs more power later in the game, whereas Zoc orients his playstyle around getting more units into the field and going aggro early on. So that might be the end of him on a map like this, because Badlands inevitably turns into a tech war. Obviously, there are 3 access points, and you have to have units with which to defend yourself, but since there are 3 access points that you can lock down, and you have so many mass extractors in your base, you will inevitably get a fast ramp to T2 NT3, strictly due to the amount of eco at your disposal. Memes is moving to the left. That's going to get his last expansion in hand slightly after Zoc claims his. Zoc adjusting his move order to account for that tank that he spotted over that away. I'm not sure. Oh, no, he's got a radar blip. That's what it was. So radar right over here, shortly before its demise, was able to alert him to the enemy combat unit. He's going to move his ACU in and build all of the mass extractors before moving on to the rest of his life. We've got plenty of land factories queued for Whiteheart, although not to the scale that I see some people building them. At this particular moment in time, we have 7 complete, and Zoc on the other side has also got 7, but he does have more land factories queued than his opponent. We've got a Tech 1 anti-air turret going down due to the airlock that has just taken place. Whiteheart moving in with 4 interceptors to kill inties as they're built from Zoc's factory, so that T1 anti-air will force those inties out of the area and allow Zoc to build up his units once again. More land factories building that'll enable even more T1 spam, and hopefully it'll let Zoc stop the advances that are happening on every corner of the map as we speak. More mass extractors going down. Zoc currently in control of 57 mass per tick as opposed to 47 for Whiteheart, so a relatively substantial lead there as Zoc was able to finish his expansions much earlier than his opponent, partly due to the raiding that he's done. So this is where his early game philosophy is very strong, since he's able to kill off his opponent's expansioneers and important units. We've got a land factory being edge built by an engineer for Petrick. Zoc also building an air factory, but since the ACU has twice as much build power, that land factory will obviously finish much sooner and get combat units out. So I think that Zoc will end up winning this, but I hear a T1 bomber that's coming in to lay in damage on 3 Mantis, killing one, and the other one will be reduced to rubble as the Strikers move in. Strikers killing off a mass extractor, definitely going to pick up the kill on that radar, and then clumping up to aggro the core. A good response from Zoc, pulling in Mantis from every area to deal with this incursion, and I think he will be able to squash it very quickly indeed. Looks like we've got 10 land factories plus another 3 on the other side. So is that 13? I think it is, but we will take account of Petrick's side first. So that's going to give him 15 land factories versus 14 for Zoc, counting the 1 over here on the edge. And it doesn't look like any more are currently planned. So Petrick is going to take a very, very slight production advantage at this point in the game. Whiteheart at 61 mass per tick, 57 per tick to Zoc, with way more power income on Zoc's side. So we may see a T2 air shift or land shift very, very soon. I think that would probably be the best bet. T1 transport dropping units over on the plateau. We do not have an edge build planned for that engineer, but we do have a successful run by. Zoc able to get some Mantis into the rear of the base, kill off a couple engineers. He's going to move to the south. There's only 3 tanks to defend against that, and the ACU will not be able to range in time. But we now have enough units for a counter push in the center and left sides. So Zoc may run into issues having devoted some of his units to the rear. Zoc is currently pursuing some aggro tanks on his side of the map as well. Unfortunate that a Tham is out right there. Is that? Yes, that is another Striker. Why did I say Tham? Striker. We have a second land factory that is not going to build, and now we have a situation where it is 1 versus 1 on the tank count, running by each other, and this factory is slightly ahead on the production. So Petrick is going to take the lead on that plateau unless Zoc is able to do something and quickly. There's also a Lobo online now, which will instantly erase any unit that comes into range should an artillery shell hit it. When these are not pacing correctly, though, that might not be the case. There it goes. That leaves 1 Tham alive, double the unit count for Petrick on that plateau, even if it is only 1 versus 2. Alright, Engineer trying to edge build a factory, but that is going to get completely shut down due to the Lobos on the edge. So I think Petrick is going to gain control of both sides, although there is a second land factory in place now for Zoc. Odd that you would build 2 land factories in such a weird location to fight over 2 mass extractors in an area that can't even impact the rest of the map immediately. Obviously, you can build T2 artillery, attack launcher, mobile missile launchers, or whatever on the plateau to affect the game later, but by that point you might have invested so much into the win that it isn't really worth it until significantly later in the game. Nice little engagement in the center. It's going to come out in favor, I think, of Petrick. He does have more units towards the middle. He's also built a T1 point defense up on the front line in order to prevent those units from moving in. T2HQ is up, and we have a Rhino on the front edge, so Zoc has deigned to build the T2 instead of running directly to T3. We've also got a T2HQ on the south side, which has pumped a pillar into the world and is now working on flak. Pillars are definitely worth spamming. You don't necessarily have to move directly to the Percival stage of the game. I like this edge built point defense that might have just succeeded in giving unit advantage to Zoc, if only temporarily, but with 2 factories building versus 1, that is only going to be temporary. Let's take a look at the ecos and reclaim. We've got 77 per tick versus 75, so virtually identical in that regard. 6,800 reclaim and a total of 55. So Zoc slightly ahead. Then if we take a look at unit count, we've got 64 strikers, let's say 80 T1 units, and then I don't see any T2. 6 pillars. So 6 pillars and 80 T1. If we go check out Zoc, we've got 46 Mantis plus 15 Medusas, so at a severe disadvantage in unit count, and 2 Rhinos back in the base. 3 Rhinos in total. So Zoc might be slightly ahead in eco. He's got some T2 mass extractors. He's building T2 power, and he is probably going to upgrade to some T2 support factories in short order. Yes, he is. But right now, he's going to struggle to maintain map control in the face of a vastly superior unit count from Petrick. Petrick's also just completed nano repair. Where is his commander? Let me go find it. We can go to Whiteheart and then press on the ACU. There it is. That's going to give him gun and nano, that nasty 50 regen per second, coupled with 200 DPS and the extended range overcharge that is going to be incredibly difficult to deal with. Zoc is unupgraded, and with his already low unit count, I just can't see him dealing with this very well at all. We do have the T3 land jump, though. Loyalists about to hit the field. Zoc pulling that incredibly early stunt before 13 minutes. He has 2 Loyalists out in the world, but the question is, can he recover enough ground with those Loyalists to make this move worth it? We've got the T2 HQ still building pillars and flak, so no T3 move as of yet, and now there is a scout across the base, so Petrick knows that T3 has entered the world. Perhaps Zoc, with his 20 mass per tick lead, will be able to build enough Loyalists to prevent this incursion, but I don't know that that will be the case. We've got so many pillars moving in, along with that incredibly tough commander. We've got 13 pillars, plenty of T1, plenty of artillery. This is going to do a number on the build power. Point defense going down incredibly quickly for Zoc as he strives to prevent this from happening in any way that he can. 4 Loyalists on the front line with a 5th nearly out of the factory. This is maybe enough to prevent the move, but if that HQ goes down, I think we can call all lost for Zoc. Cerberus turret dying to the ACU fire. We've got another Cerberus in the back along with several more plans, and the factories will provide meat shields from the oncoming units. ACU now taking fire. Several of the pillars on the front line are down, but Loyalists now getting overcharged. Petrick definitely has the power income and the storage to abuse that overcharge quite heavily. More pillars moving up from the rear, a total of 44 on the map now. That is terrifying to look at. As the fire comes down on that T3 HQ, boom goes the factory. And I think with that, we are going to see the collapse of Zock's base and the ultimate win by Petric. I don't see how Zock can come back from that. He's officially lost both plateaus, he lost map control, and he's only got 4 Loyalists and 4 Cerberus turrets to defend him from this incredibly hardy ACU. 62 regen per tick with a massive damage potential. That is a perfect overcharge right there. 3 Loyalists with 1 pop, but Petric is not going to take advantage of it. Retreating slightly. He's not overflowing as much power as he was a moment ago, which is restricting his ability to get rid of those T3 units. Loyalists waiting in now and hitting those units on the front line, but still more build power is going down. Zock now wading into the fight with his unupgraded ACU. Point defense on the right going down as more units still stream into the base. So in defending the core, he is now going to start losing some of his outside edges. We've got a T2 land factory built. That is a support, never mind, it was not upgraded to an HQ, so still no HQ in progress for Zock. He's just struggling to maintain his grip on his side of the map, but I think even at that, he is not going to be successful. Look at all of the T1 artillery, look at the pillars, we've got 13 of those in hand. Maybe the 40 that I was looking at earlier was actually Lobos and not pillars, but I'm not sure which one I clicked on. Somebody in the comments will surely let me know. And that is all versus 19 Medusas, 3 Loyalists, and I don't think there are 3 Mantis. 3 Mantis on the map. I think we can officially call that G freaking G. It was a play for the T3 land rush, and it did not work out. Petric was able to take the slow and steady route to victory, spamming pillars up, getting that combat commander, and straight up eliminating the core of his opponent's base. That is a hit that nobody can come back from, even on their best day. Zock is struggling to rebuild T1 power over on the right side of the map since he lost his core grouping, and even as he's doing so, pillars are moving into the area to try and lay in some damage. Of course, the T1 point defense is going to temporarily protect it, but Lobos are already in place to deal with those. They will slowly eat into the base. No amount of point defense can deny them forever. And meanwhile, Petric is still at a 50% mass advantage, a 60% or 70% power advantage, and I'm sure he has a boatload of reclaim, 2,000 ahead on the reclaim, not as much as I thought, but still ahead. Artillery streaming through the base is hard to kill, 2 shots per, and they're able to fire and do so much damage. In the meantime, Zock down to 3,400 HP. These Loyalists, 20 kills each or more. Well, 19 kills. Kill 1. Just kill 1. You gotta get that last kill to make everybody equal. And kills get sniped out from under it constantly. Can you do it? There it is. 20 kills on all of the Loyalists. I'm surprised at how long they have stayed alive, but eventually even they will go down. ACU succeeding in killing off the rest back there. We've got another power build up on the top right for Zock as he struggles to maintain a hold on this game. More of the Medusas are going to be able to knock out those units as they move back towards the right. And now we've got T1 bombers in, trying to kill off the rest of the build power. New vet system, yeah, 1 or 2 vets, yada yada yada, and Zock throws out the GG and control Ks. It was an excellent play. I think Zock was probably right to go for the T3, but in the end, Whiteheart just had so much of a unit advantage. He was able to just push in with his lower tier units and wreck the base thoroughly enough that Zock could not come back. That is the end of the Legend of the Stars tournament. Petric takes it. Zock fought valiantly, going undefeated until he faced Petric, then went 2 wins to 2 wins, losing in the final round. Petric the victor, taking the trophy and the $500 prize. Well played to every single player in this tournament, and I think we can conclusively say that Zoc and Whiteheart are definitely the two best in the current FAF competitive community, and Petrick has finally taken the crown. I hope you guys have enjoyed the tournament coverage. I am sad that I was not able to live cast the entire thing, but I had to be out of town Sunday. But here you go, you get all of the games laid out before you in the form of YouTube videos. I'd like to thank each and every person who supports this channel and what I do. That is going to be the last tournament for the year. There are more coming in January and February though, so stick around for those if you would like to see a bit more of the competitive scene. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.